Verse 24. Paul says this, the God who made the world and everything in it. He who is Lord of heaven and earth does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath and all things. From one ancestor he made all nations to inhabit the whole earth, and he allotted the times of their existence and the boundaries of the places where they would live. It's a reference back to Abraham. So that they would search for God and perhaps grope for him and find him. Though, indeed, he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and we move and we have our being. As even some of your own prophets have said, for we too are his offspring. I want to juxtapose that to the prophet Micah in the Old Testament, who's speaking to a very religious group of people, who would take time on one of the national holidays, perhaps even Super Bowl Sunday, to show up in church. He's speaking to a very religious group of people who are wondering just what their religion will get them. Micah chapter 6, verse 6 and following. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? That's to say, what can I offer to God to make God love me more? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? How much do I have to give? The prophet responds in this way. He has told you, O mortal, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God. What does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. We've been endeavoring in these last 6 weeks together. We have one more week of questions. We've been endeavoring to try to respond to some of your questions around faith and life, trying to make that connection between our daily lives and what we do here. We want to respond to this question today. What is required? What's enough? When will I know it's enough? What is required? Now, I don't know about you, but often we don't want to give more than what we already have to give. I'll use this example. You go to the grocery store, you pick out a gallon of milk, right? You know that you're a 1% kind of family, so you pick up your 1% gallon of milk. And you pay the price of the gallon of milk. You don't offer to pay another 35 cents on top of the gallon, right? You pay what is owed, what is required, what's the minimum that I have to pay to get this thing. Sometimes in our faith lives, like, how much do I have to give? What is required? This last week, I had to volunteer as parents of high school athletes. You have to volunteer at concession stands or at scoring tables, right? It's a wonderful thing, right? And so I had to volunteer from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. And you know what? At 5 o'clock, I was done. I didn't offer to continue to volunteer. Like, I gave what I was supposed to give, and that was enough. Or I have some friends who have been posting on Facebook that they've been skiing in Colorado. Super jealous about them being able to ski in Colorado. I can't imagine going on a skiing vacation to Colorado and going down one run and then just being done with it, right? No, I want to take advantage of everything that's in front of me, right? I want to go down the slope as many times as I can. Like, when is the last time that I can go up the slope so that I can time, so I can do everything, right? But often we wonder, like, what's the minimum? We ask our confirmation students to take 25 sermon notes. You take them? We ask our confirmation students to take 25 sermon notes every year. From September to September, we ask them to do 25 sermon notes. You know what? Very rarely has a confirmation student come to me and said, I would really love to do 27. Can I do 28? Can I keep doing sermon notes? No, like, we get it. We do the work, and then we're done, right? So, in our faith life, like what is required? 2 sermon fill-ins for you this morning on the prayer bulletin. 2 sermon fill-ins. Not complicated. The first is this. What is required? Nothing. Nothing. God's grace is enough. And I'm sorry, but there's nothing that you can do, or there's nothing that you can give, or nothing that you can earn to try to make God love you more. What is required? Jesus. And nothing else. Grace. And nothing else. What is required? Paul says this as he approaches this religious city in Athens. Athens, Greece, some of you have been there. Very in the time that Paul is visiting in the early New Testament, Paul is visiting Athens. Athens is a very, what's known as a pantheistic community. That's to say that there are many different shrines, many different ways of offering to many different deities. And Paul stands in this Areopagus, this kind of famous theater area, and he says to them this: all of those shrines, all of those temples, all those different places of worship that are dotting the streets, that are there and there and there and there, he says this: the God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, doesn't live in shrines made by human hands, nor is served by human hands as though he needed anything. Like, God is God. And so let God be God. You're not going to make God do anything. How can you earn God's favor? Only because God chooses to have favor on you. There's nothing that we can do to earn God's favor. God already says, I love you and I love the world, and have made that declaration on a cross in Calvary 2,000 some years ago to say, I love you and I love the world. What is required? First, I respond by saying nothing. God's grace is enough. It has to be. God's grace is enough. It's not something that I just believe, it's something that I'm counting on. That God's grace is enough for you and for me. What is required? I had a dermatologist appointment right before Christmas. Dermatologist appointment that I go to because they've shaved a couple different things off of my body in time to say that doesn't look quite right. We need to test that piece there. That doesn't look quite right. There's this freckle. There's this bump. There's this nodule that doesn't look quite right on my shoulder. So they take a look at it. I had a dermatologist appointment this a couple months ago, and they said, there's this spot on your shoulder. It's right there. Doesn't look quite right. In fact, it doesn't look right enough that we're going to do not just a skin graft, Nate, we're going to do a skin punch. I said, ooh, that sounds exciting. We're going to take a little bit extra. We're going to go a little bit deeper. And so I came in and they numbed up the area and went just a little deeper. And my question to them was not, don't go so far. My question was, did you get enough? Did you go far enough? And so I respond to that question, what is required, in two ways. What is required? Nothing and everything. Everything. Our whole lives are offered back to God. Everything that we think we own, everything that we think we consume, everything we think we do is offered back to God in offering and in thanksgiving to God. And there was this group of lovers of the Lord in the Old Testament who were convinced that they were doing enough, that they were giving everything. And the prophet Micah goes to them and they say to Micah, like, how much is enough? We think that we're doing enough. We're offering burnt offerings with calves a year old. We're giving thousands of rams. We're giving 10,000s of rivers of oil. We're going to give our firstborn son. Will that be enough? And the prophet Micah comes back and says, all of that religious phooey that you're doing, it's not enough. What matters is how you live your life. And he says this, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. What is required? Nothing. And everything. Every single thing. Which gets complicated, right? Because, we have lives to live, so how do we start? How could we possibly start? I came across a news story this week of a police officer who came across a car that was in an area that wasn't supposed to be in. I know as soon as they say that, we're immediately thinking all of the negative. And I want to just share with you the story of, it's about 90 seconds long, the story of this police officer who did something.
We have all been there in moments when life is just relentlessly pushing down on us and we just need a hug. Now, a moment caught on a camera by a Michigan County deputy is grabbing attention nationwide. The deputy noticed a car pulled over on a road and what he found surprised him. After checking on the driver, it became clear he had a lot on his shoulders and he needed just one thing.
Is there anything I can do to help you? Give you a hug. I'll give you a hug. Seems like you got a lot going on there. That's all right. All right, man. It seems like a lot to take on,
Good, we can get you some help.
Yeah, we can get you somebody to talk to and stuff.
A hug goes a long way. To me, I didn't think it would help that young man, and it reassured me that things that I went through years ago, when I saw that young man's face, I knew he was going through something similar that I was going through back in the day.
Deputies say the sheriff's office asked the man for permission to share this video and he agreed. They hope it reminds people there is help out there.
So what's required? It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. I think it does start, though, somewhere, and it has to start somewhere. Because the reality is that we live in a world that is far too unkind. We live in a world that is far too unjust. We live in a world that is far too proud. And so those three instructions from the prophet Micah, that starts to give us some traction. That starts to teach us what it means to be a lover of the Lord, to be a follower of Jesus, to do justice. I'm the parent of two wrestlers, and one of the preoccupation of parents of wrestlers is this. You used to do this. You would argue with the officials, or you would argue with the calls of the officials and say, no, come on, they're giving back points already. Come on, why are you counting so slow? Or why are you counting too fast? That wasn't a pin, right? Whatever it is, right? We as parents of wrestlers, like that's what it seems like to be a pastime of ours, we argue with the officials. What matters in officiating is justice. So if you're going to call it this way for one, you're going to call it this way for another, right? Martin Luther King Jr. says this of justice and injustice anywhere, he says, is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And so, one of the things that we can advocate for and do better at is finding and seeking justice. And also loving kindness. To love kindness. I used to drop my kids off at school. I don't anymore, they drive themselves. I used to drop my kids off at school. And one of the last things that I wanted them to hear from me when they got out of the car were two things. Be good and be kind. Be good and be kind. We live in a world that is far too unkind. I'm really proud of the kids for all their successes and all that they do and whatever else. But more than anything, I want to raise kind kids. And I know that I got to be better at that too. We live in a world that is far too unkind. We see a way to get to the front of the line and we will do whatever we can. We step on whoever we need to, we will do whatever we can so that we can be first. And the prophet Micah tells us to walk humbly, to put others first. C.S. Lewis says this about humility, it's not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Right? Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. What is required? Nothing and everything. And I think we have a good start when we are about doing justice and loving kindness and walking in humility. What is required? Thanks be to God that we have been given the gift of salvation and life eternal and a fresh start in kindness and in justice and in humility today. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the sermons of Paul, the sermons of Micah, which teach us that you will not be confined to human temples, things made by human hands, that you need nothing from us. You've given us everything. And so, in requiring of us nothing, you ask of us everything. And so we give to you this day our lives. We offer this moment, this breath, to you in praise and thanksgiving. Amen.